Hi, everyone. Here in the United States and around the world, 2020, January, has started off here in Albuquerque so unseasonably warm and mild. And Chocolate and Fluffy, they both grew what seemed like it was going to be winter coats for like a cold winter. And now they're lying down in like air under a door because they have gotten so much hair. And I'm going to be going on Friday to get them both to get cut, the haircut that I usually wouldn't get until the spring. And so this is another sign of the big changes that appear to be going on our planet with climate. Unusual warm. If you'd seen today here, blue sky, white puffy clouds, sandiacrest looked like it was ready for hiking. And here's Chocolate with his big furry coat. And Fluffy, who is so smart, knows exactly when the lights come on. Fluffy usually goes the other way, but Chocolate likes this. And so Chocolate hangs around and is just such a great furry pal. So hello to all of you out there who continue to send me greetings with pictures of your beautiful furry souls. I can't imagine life without sharing love with furry souls like these cats, and hope that we get a lot more of that in 2020 than war drums. And now I'm going to put dear beautiful Chocolate down so that I can talk a little bit about what, in contrast to the love and the wonder of being with a beautiful, furry, loving cat, that the weather that is changing around the world is so dramatic, and that we are having put in our faces, in our minds, and our souls almost every day about the terrible temperatures and drought in Australia that have caused the horrific fires, in which scientists now estimate that the number of life forms that have been killed by uncontrolled flames, they're now going above 500 million, and some are even saying it is at least 1 billion. 1 billion creatures in Australia burned up in fires. They think that some species perhaps have even gone extinct in this 2020 Australian summer. The wildfires in Australia by January 15th today have burned through more than 38,000 square miles, and the concerns about trying to cope in a new world where brush fires can begin rapidly and sweep uncontrolled into houses, buildings, cars, people, and animals, it is really a huge and growing concern. This week, WildfireToday.com reported that a 2019 Pentagon report cleared for publication is entitled Reports on Effects of a Changing Climate to the Department of Defense, close quote. And it states, quote, this report represents a high-level assessment of the vulnerability of DoD installations to recurrent flooding, drought, desertification, wildfires, and thawing permafrost that releases methane. About 2/3 of the 79 military installations addressed in this DoD report in the United States are vulnerable to current or future recurrent flooding, and more than 1/2 are vulnerable to current or future drought, which makes 1/2, 50% of the Department of Defense military installations vulnerable to wildfires. Another persistent change in our environment that has been mysteriously repeating around the world for the past decade are loud, unexplained booms. This boom headline was today, January 15th, 2020. Many people throughout San Diego County in Southern California reported to social media and local KGTV news a huge boom and shaking that made people wonder if there had been a big earthquake. It was that physical. But as of later this afternoon, there were no answers. And this headline was January 12th, only 3 days ago, on Saturday night. The KHOU 11 TV newsroom in Houston, Texas, was suddenly flooded with people calling to report a huge boom that shook whole houses in Brazoria County. KHOU contacted 7 different police and sheriff's departments, but no one had any answers to what caused the huge boom. Then this was the second house-shaking boom in the past half year, also reported in Brazoria County. Law enforcement there, near the Gulf of Mexico, were puzzled a few months ago by a lot of loud boom reports that were never solved in the towns of Manville to Alvin. It's called Alvin Heights. If anyone listening has more information about those loud, unexplained booms in San Diego today and Brazoria County, Texas this past weekend, please send me an email to earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Think of a reporter who files news about the Earth. So it's always earthfiles@earthfiles.com. And the drone mystery persists in Colorado and Nebraska, with a few sightings moving across borders a bit into Kansas and Wyoming. Alex Peterson, owner of the Windmill Angus Ranch in Hagler, Nebraska, who I interviewed last week on my Earthfiles live stream, has continued to see and report unexplained drone-like activity over his ranch as recently as last night, but didn't get more videos last night. One recent drone Facebook posting shows what look like geometric figures in the sky. But the patterns are the result of the user increasing brightness, contrast, and sharpening focus of the low-light video noise, which causes pixel artifacts in patterns like this. But now, take a look at the strange green pattern of triangles in this sky under a moon in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. The photograph was taken 5 months ago on August 7th, 2019, 2 days before the pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia began last year. I was able to talk by phone with the photographer this morning. He is Imran Chowdhury, who lives in the Rochdale suburb of Greater Manchester, England. Imran had traveled to Mecca, where the Prophet Muhammad was born, to go on the Hajj to the Great Mosque, where nearly 2 billion Muslims each year gather around a large black structure, perhaps housing an ancient meteorite. Imran told me he had a new iPhone, and in his excitement to be in Mecca, he was taking constant still photos of everything around him. He had just passed the famous Clock Tower Hotel behind him when he took this photograph, and a few seconds later, Imran snapped this second photograph that also shows the green triangular patterns below the moon. The time on his iPhone was 9 p.m. in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Amazingly, he never saw with his eyes those green triangles in that line when he was photographing. He was caught up, as he said, with all the people around him and the hotels and the buildings. But he took a photograph because of the zest and the energy of the people around him, not realizing until he returned to his hotel and he began sorting his Mecca photos to send to some of his relatives in England. That's when he first saw the strange pale green patterns of triangles, and he wondered, what are they? Imran heard about my investigations of the Colorado and Nebraska mystery drones and wanted to get his 2 Mecca photos to me, asking if I had ever seen anything like it before. And Ian Holling, who is a colleague of mine in England, helped get us together in email and those photos to me. And when I was looking at this pattern that you are seeing also, that he had not known at the time and that I am now looking at, I personally have never seen such a specific straight line digital pattern like this superimposed in a sky beneath a nearly full moon. But over the past several years, there have been photographs and videos in places like Stephenville, Texas, where I went to investigate back in January of 2008, a series of UFO sightings, and people were seeing, like now in a way, bright lights in the sky that were sometimes forming patterns, but the big thing was the way they projected symbols, hieroglyphs, ancient old languages out of the lights. I saw the entire 12-minute video taken by a resident of hundreds of careful moving lights in the night sky over Stephenville, Texas. And here is one of those photos. It's an example. It shows you how complex each of the symbols was, how they were structured in a three-dimensional way, segmented in colors, and intricately put together. In that 12-minute film, there were thousands of symbols. And I began doing historic work, trying to find matches in ancient languages, and I found some. Now, that is a different story, but they both have the bottom line of having something in the sky that seems to either be in the whole Colorado, Nebraska, Wyoming, Kansas region. Some people have said that they have seen lights move in a straight line like a grid pattern. The Mecca looked like a straight grid pattern but done in triangular shapes. And when you step back from everything that is going on in Colorado, Nebraska, and you ask what has been flying at various altitudes since the middle of December at least, and some emailers say they were seeing exactly what is being videotaped now by eyewitnesses. They saw it in the summer. So how long has this been going on? The eyewitnesses say sometimes they hear buzzing and sometimes it's silent. That was Alex Peterson's experience on his Angus Ranch in Hagler, Nebraska. People say that sometimes it looks like they are looking at something that is like an 8-sided stop sign, and you would think that was an octocopter. But others say they look at something that is round-shaped through field glasses. And sometimes that people have seen what looked like a pattern, the shape of something like a Cessna, and it was all white. And that they have seen these various objects moving at 400 feet, 800 feet, at 1,000 feet. Alex said that there was a solid red light that seemed to be up there more static. Maybe it was the monitor, maybe it was the communicator to the lower drones. That's what everybody's asking. Well, as this drone mystery in its current phase has been being reported by so many people since the middle of December, and now we are at January 15th, the middle of January, and it's still going. And nobody has given an answer. These mystery drones challenge our right as American citizens to know what aerial technology is being let loose above so many communities where sheriffs and police and military and Homeland Security and the FAA and the FBI met to talk about it, didn't want any people there, and they have remained silent, even rescinding some of their very first posts. And that silence, to me, implies they have some knowledge. But who has told them to not tell the people, and why? I find this to be a fascinating moment in our history, because it seems to have the elements of truly unknown, the possibility that it's a DARPA program, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency in the Defense Department, that gets a lot of money for doing really, we'll call it high-end and at the edge of science investigations. And you probably have read, I'm going to be doing more about this at Earthfiles in the next week or two. DARPA did release, like a press release about a year or so ago, saying that they were going to do drone experiments in which there would be drones released maybe every 6 months in new evolving programs. But my logical investigative reporter mind says that if DARPA has announced those kinds of research projects on a 6-month period with drones for various reasons, then wouldn't they have been the first to step up to the plate in mid-December and say, yeah, this is the research project, one of them, that we wrote you about, we reported about. But nobody has done that either. Well, when I go back to 2008 and the extraordinary time that I spent in Stephenville, Texas, I was seeing lights pulsing in the sky, changing colors, moving in patterns that reflected this 12-minute extraordinary video that a man got back then. So when I got back to my office, I called up a colleague and somebody that I had worked with as an abductee, an experiencer in the human abduction experience, whose name is Jim Sparks. And he was then a first-hand experiencer with gray aliens and very tall reptilians who had shown him all kinds of symbols and hieroglyphs in what he said was like being in advanced extraterrestrial technologies aboard some kind of advanced craft, and they were trying to teach him to get the A through Z alphabet as we would know it in English translated into alien symbols. And that when he looked at that video in Stephenville, and we talked about my search to match some of the symbols with ancient languages, which I was able to do, he talked about the fact that that made sense to him based on the work that he had done with these aliens on craft, and summarized it in his 2006 book entitled The Keepers, an alien message for the human race. And when he did an interview for me for Earthfiles in February of 2008, and I asked him about the symbols, this was a very interesting insight for all of you to carry, because no matter what, we don't know what is over the skies in Colorado and Nebraska and Kansas and Wyoming, or whether it's going to keep spreading, and we don't know if it's military or government or aerospace or what it is. But both of the cases, Stephenville and now up in the states of the Western Rocky Mountains, we're dealing with some kind of pattern that we don't understand. And this is what Jim Sparks told me, looking at what we had seen in the sky in Texas. I find it fascinating that the way the symbols are presented, I would call flashed. I know that flashing symbols is a method of getting information from ET to ET or ET to humans. It's a fast way of transmitting a tremendous amount of data in a short time and retaining it. I definitely saw that in the video in Texas too. So I asked him, the rapidity in the change of the symbols themselves is something that you recognized from your own experience with the beings on craft when they were trying to teach you. He said, yes, and the best way for me to explain something like this is if I mention to you a movie. Let's say that I were to say, for example, Gone with the Wind. Most people have seen that movie. Or maybe Independence Day, another very popular film. So everybody has shared the experience of those movies sitting in a theater together. You feel emotion related to what you felt, what the movie was about, how it began, how it ended, because you sat through that 2 hours watching it at what I would call a slow speed for humans. That's how any of us in the movies, we receive a slow download of data. Now, the human mind, like mine, is capable of getting these flashes of downloads from the non-humans. He said, non-human intelligent beings in this galactic neighborhood, this is how they communicate. Fast, rapid downloads, flashes in symbols of information. He said, they can flash symbols like they did at my mind, and you can get the whole meaning of a 2-hour movie or the full meaning of whatever message they are trying to get across, and you get it like that. It comes into your mind in a flash, and how they communicated into the human mind reminded me of watching those symbols changing every second in Stephenville, Texas. The Jim Sparks experience, I did so many interviews with him. He became a big subject in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, before he wrote his own book, The Keeper. And I've done probably half a dozen or more in-depth reports with Jim and interviews, illustrations that had to do with when he was being taught symbol language by what he said were grays and sometimes tall reptiles. And the depth of that reporting is at Earthfiles. You can go to the Earthfiles archive, do a search on Jim Sparks, and you can see a lot of the work that he and I did together. And as I sit here tonight, thinking about the depth of the coverage that has been being done now nationally and even in international about whatever is flying over Colorado and Nebraska at the center and then sort of going over into the borders of Kansas and Wyoming, and that it is still going on. The one repeated question that keeps coming to me in emails and in conversations with my friends is, if this has been going on since the middle of January, or since the middle of December to the middle of January, and that some people have emailed that they saw the same type of phenomena in the summer, but they weren't supported or didn't feel like that they should report it, then why would the people who gathered in that investigation meeting on January 6th, all of the law enforcement and the FAA and Homeland Security and the Army and all of those people, why would we not be getting any specific answers? It's as if they know something, but they're not telling us. So tonight, I want to reach out again through the Earthfiles YouTube live stream now and say, if any of you are using infrared or using telephotos or trying to see whatever these flashes are in the sky up close, and you manage to get any kind of good video, please get in touch with me and maybe we can do an interview like I did with Alex Peterson and stay on this strange mystery. And that it's almost getting to the point where I think I would urge that people in Colorado and Nebraska write, call, tweet, Facebook, email their Senate and House representatives. We haven't heard from them either. These are their states. You guys ask them. There was a meeting. There were a lot of people. They kept it away from the public. Do you, my state representative, my congressman, do you know? Can you find out information about what is flying as close as 400 feet above the ground over a lot of places in Colorado and Nebraska and the surrounding borders isn't this a subject that the Congress, the representatives of the people that it's supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people, should look into and report to us? There's something very strange about this whole kind of almost paralyzed situation. Keeps on going, and nobody knows exactly what to reach out for to get the answers. So maybe with your help, maybe for those of you who might get some really good close-up video, or might be able to get an answer from your representatives or senators, I would love to report some comment that would go on between somebody in Congress. In fact, I think I'm going to write a letter myself to the representatives of New Mexico just to ask, can you find out what's going on in our fellow states north of us? So now, tonight, of everything that I have shared, the one thing that haunts me the most are those two photos in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, from August, after talking with the photographer in England this morning. His genuinely being so surprised when he saw that straight line pattern of triangular configurations in light green color. If anybody listening, even if you have to do it in a whistleblower style, has any information about what could have created those straight lines of triangles in the sky above Mecca on that moonlit night, I sure would like to hear from you on that. There's a lot of strange aerial mysteries on our planet right now, and I hope we can get some answers. Now, I would like to go to you guys and see what questions you have from what I've just presented, or any other questions from my dear colleague, Peggy.
Hi, Linda. I have a couple of thank yous to say before we start with the questions. Minnesota Folk, Christy Schaefer, Alicia, Galaxy Wolf, and Crystal Jade, thank you for your super chats.
Oh, thank you very, very much.
First, there's a question about manipulating DNA. A viewer asks, if we are to believe that aliens have been manipulating our DNA, why did they leave so many flaws such as mental illness, disease, and deformities left behind?
It is a question that I have kicked around with a variety of professional people over the last 40 years. Because when I started trying to get to the bottom of what are the bloodless, trackless animal mutilations about, the most common question and the data pushing was maybe we're dealing with a genetic harvest, that the tissue and the blood and the fluid that are being harvested and not left on or in the animals is being used for some sort of vast science project. And that led to various discussions, not just with one person, but you've heard me mention the Defense Intelligence Agency analyst in December 1999 who told me a great deal about how we had three competing civilizations of what he called extraterrestrial biological entities that came in the categories of reptilian, the gray menagerie, which was both AI and biological, and the tall Nordics, tall whites. Those were the three main competing groups. And back in December of 1999, as he told me about his work, what he monitored, and the fact that the reason he wanted to talk with me is because in my third book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness, I had a whole huge chapter about people that were humans having experiences with non-humans, and what the experiencers, the human experiencers, called a resurrection technology. Some also called it cloning technology because fundamentally, they were being exposed to extraterrestrial biological entities who showed them tubes, and in the tubes there was light at the top and the bottom, and they were being shown what looked like humans in those tubes, non-humans in those tubes, varying ages in those tubes. And the whole reason, according to the experiencers, for everything that they were shown is that the non-humans can clone any body that they want from anywhere in the Milky Way galaxy and the universe and put it in those tubes. And then let's say that they're interacting with Earth. They clone human bodies and they can hide, can't be camouflaged in them on Earth in their conflict and competition with each other as non-humans. A blonde could appear as a reptile could appear as a blonde, a gray could appear as a reptile or a blonde, and vice versa, all the way around, or human. And that in that complexity, the DIA analyst was stressing with me that the complexity of human history has been made almost impenetrable to human civilizations from Homo erectus up to Homo sapiens sapien, because all of the standing up primates, the humanoids that we look back in history, and we have anthropology and archaeology that teach us about this evolution, that every single one of those standing up primates was a different genetic experiment. So when you get to Neanderthal, they had a bigger brain capacity than Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, which is the current model. They appeared to put flowers on graves of their dead. That's been determined by studying the seeds in rectangular formations where they found skeletons of the Neanderthals. Why was this crossfade created if the non-humans are the ones that manipulate with all the DNA? Because the Neanderthals seem very strong, very healthy, spiritual, large brain. What was the necessity to do the next model, Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien? And to the question specifically, through all these different genetic manipulations, why would this current model be subject to so many different diseases? After 2 million years of genetic manipulations, why wouldn't we be a perfect match for being on Earth? For all of the various viruses, bacteria, fungi. Why would we be vulnerable? The only insight that I can share on that question, and it's just an insight, but it does come from talking with genetic, medical, PhD, MD people. If the statement or hypothesis were true, that from Homo erectus up to the current model, Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien, that every single one that has been found, including the very strange Denisovans that don't seem to have any connection to anything coming up directly to Cro-Magnon. If the DIA analyst was correct that they have been 3 extraterrestrial biological civilizations that have been competing and are in conflict with each other it might explain. It did telepathic downloads, as I understand it, every day. And they were recorded on, at that time, 16 millimeter film that later it would have been nitrate, and they changed it over into something that is still preserved. And that one of the issues that came up was the Eben type. That's the type that was at Los Alamos, who stayed with a U.S. Air Force captain who could get the telepathy so good. Not all humans get telepathy from ETs, and our government has always looked for what they called translators, people who could get telepathy. And this Air Force captain was extremely good, and he was the translator for the Eben. And one of the sentences that was stressed to me by the military person who has seen some of this film, who actually knew this translator, the Eben said, "We made you. We put you here, but you have to live it." And that other people have gotten a pattern that when this next model of Homo sapiens sapien came about, there had been changes for reasons that are known only to the Ebens. And that whatever their genetic manipulation is, last week I was raising the question that maybe all this genetic material, all of this genetic manipulation, all the harvesting on Earth is because something is trying to work through the matter world to get back to another dimension that might be the progenitor of this entire universe. And that all of the mechanics of having soul recycling in matter containers that can be cloned, that can be substituted, that can be used in wars, that can be used in peace, that can be used in love and hate, all of it. That the part we aren't understanding is that the whole universe is somebody else's experiment. So why would we not be made perfectly? I think the DIA analyst hit the nail on the head when he said, they compete over us. He said, Linda, I've seen information where the Ebens, in one of the recorded interviews, said they didn't understand why their experiments on this planet, which included making all the dinosaurs and then taking them out, and then going to mammals and working on the creation of standing up primates, they didn't understand why we ended up with the various racial species that we did. That the Greys, to somebody in our government, expressed that was not their intent. So if this is a beautiful laboratory planet, and it has 3 extraterrestrial civilizations that have been competing in conflict for at least 270 million years. Other people think it's 1 billion, but the DIA analyst was consistent about 270 million years. Then think about it. 3 competing extraterrestrial groups, mixing and matching genes, and they end up with a whole lot of surprises because each one is not entirely in control of what is happening. And that might be the insight into why humanity is such an extraordinary life form, because I think that we are. And that is where you get to the whole question of, we're not perfect. We are flawed. But in that imperfection and in those flaws are souls that are just struggling so hard to keep humans on a solid track. It may be that it was serendipity, that humanity now came out of all of that competition, all of those conflicts, all of the deceptions, all of the pulling the rug out from under each other, that right now, even if we're imperfect and flawed, we may be just spectacularly unique in this universe, and something worth fighting for to live. Peggy, what about another question?
We had a viewer asking about lost civilizations. They wanted to know what you know about them. How many do you think there have been, and why are they being suppressed from us?
Well, right at the top of my list is Antarctica. The work that I have done with Spartan 1 on his own walking in these vast 9-acre rooms, has left me with a question about why would there be any civilization that was not human building at such huge sizes. And I was talking about that with the retired Navy captain that I work with, Mark Wood. And he had, I thought, a very interesting suggestion. He said, if there have been civilizations who have been involved with evolutionary experiments on this planet, going all the way back to Pangea, and you get back, you're starting to get back into exactly what the DIA guy said, at least 270 million years of experimentation. He said maybe because these different types that are extremely advanced, and they all can neutralize gravity, they all can project holograms, they can all work in invisibility, and they can work in the camouflage of mimicking each other. Maybe the only way that they can sustain what they want to do on this incredible laboratory planet is that they have to go either underground, or they have to, like we think of non-humans being based on the Earth now below the surface, but always present. And if you extend that to ETs competing with ETs, they would have to compete at a completely different level than humans can even comprehend. And that the large, large sizes of these spaces that not only Spartan 1, but another Navy SEAL that I have not been able to introduce to the public yet, but he has definitely been helpful in guiding me to places in Antarctica and other places on the planet where I am convinced he's saying this is evidence that we have alien presences. Maybe they would have to bring in at times those huge 2-mile-long craft that people saw with their own eyes on March 13th, 1997, flying over Arizona, flying over Phoenix. What was in that 2-mile-long huge triangle? Maybe that's where you start getting to the progenitors, the controlling intelligences that might have their clones and their androids and all here on the planet, and that's what we deal with more than the progenitors. Spartan 1 said that the photographs that he was shown of the other intelligence that had created the big, huge structures that he was in 2 miles down, he saw photographs. And he said they were hairless, tall, much taller than the average human, human-like features, only bigger. Well, that also sounds like some of the descriptions for the Anunnaki and the Sumerian, being much taller than the humans that are carved in all of the stones in the cuneiform, but very human looking, wearing hats and various things. So it may be that the size of architecture might be a clue that periodically there have been what we would call mile-long craft. It's just a speculation because he doesn't know, I don't know. Spartan 1 does not know. Spartan 2 does not know. The other Navy SEAL, who has also been there 3 times and can prove it to me, he doesn't fully understand either. But he adds this. He said that the one who's been there 3 times, he said that they were assigned to walk a hallway that was at least 2 miles long based on the digital monitoring that he had. And he said, and when they got to a certain intersection, 2 miles or so in, that something came out of the walls. This man is highly trained, as SEALs are. And he said that what came out of the walls, as trained as he is, as good as he is, as fast as he is, that his mind kind of went tilt, and he was the commander. And he was more shocked that he was stopped in his tracks because he's not stoppable in normal human affairs the way he's been trained. And he told me, Linda, whatever was coming out of those walls, it was affecting my mind and my men's mind immediately. And he said, and I found myself in the biggest fight of my life, fighting to get my mind back from something I couldn't comprehend what it was, looked like a hologram. He said I could see through it. We could all see through something coming through the wall. And he said, you look back in retrospect, it did something to our minds. It stopped this trained SEAL unit. But we could see through it. Well, over and over again, I have been told by abductees, by military, by others, that one of the best technologies that the non-humans have to work with on Earth is projecting holograms that the human mind cannot discern from the world around us. And that in their competition with each other, the non-humans use these projected holograms to cause fear or to maybe cause attraction. Who knows what they all can do? But that right behind the projection of the holograms, it's always been said, the ability for the non-humans to immediately go into invisibility. No matter how they first appeared, they can disappear, which is exactly what happened in Antarctica that the SEAL was describing. Holographic projection, then disappearance, and then the third huge category that ties into the whole ancient aliens going back as far as we can go back, neutralizing gravity. That the pyramids and pyramid building, not only on our planet, but in other solar systems that our government knows, that there have been huge pyramids built in lots of places in the Milky Way galaxy. We know this. But who are they? And where did they go? So this is like getting into I call it, and you can find it at earthfiles.com, a hall of mirrors with a quicksand floor. It is really complex. But the thing that keeps me going, and I think it keeps a lot of you going based on the incredible letters and emails that you send me. Who are we? Who are we really? This remarkable humanoid that we call Homo sapiens sapien in this current model. And that there are some kind of intelligences from other places in this universe that are so interested in this planet that they have been based here for at least 270 million years, 3 civilizations competing with each other, and eventually extracting genes from whatever they extracted, manipulating to make a standing up primate, maybe to serve them in the beginning as diggers of gold or whatever. And now it really feels like, there is a lot of intelligence out there that is rooting for us to not go to nuclear war, to not destroy the planet by not being able to control global warming. That we are right at, and Jim Sparks, that was the one thing that he stressed with me in all of the discussions we had when he was helping me on my book and I was helping him on his and the discussions. He said, Linda, I have been shown as clearly as going to a movie theater. Two completely different visions of the future of this planet. And he said, and I always felt like they had me metaphorically or physically standing on a line, like right in the middle. Here's this timeline, here's this timeline, and we are right there, right in the middle. And he said, one is dark and turbulent and chaotic and destructive to all life on Earth. The other, he said, is the sun is literally shining everywhere. That life flourishes, and in that life flourishing, we learn how to meet, to communicate with, and to have even cohabitation with what he called the non-humans who wanted to teach him how to communicate with them and how to be on a craft. Now, Jim Sparks was never able to answer the question, why? But he felt that he had this experience with very advanced intelligences who downloaded huge amounts of information in these flashes. And humans are not born to do that. And so standing at the center point right now is exactly what Jim Sparks said he was shown. We could have war and destruction and climate catastrophe on this side, and this one, we all learn to live in the village of Earth. And in the village of Earth is a huge mixture of standing up primates. And instead of fighting each other, instead of looking at things like skin color as a separation point, that we would begin to see that the whole human family in all of its variations is why we are so unique and worth fighting for. And Jim told me the last time I saw him, he said, Linda, we are right on the cusp. It's going to go one way or the other, fast. And do you know, as bad as things have been, as badly as Australia has been hurting with fire and California with fire and the threat again in the Middle East and all of that, there is something that it feels to me that I am sensing that in the young people of the planet, they are willing now to fight for the environment and for everybody to get on board. How do we live in collaboration with our planet so it doesn't go through these huge, huge climate swings? If we can get into this next phase that way with the announcement that we're not alone in the universe, there are friendlies, they are wanting to help us, they can be among us, and we wouldn't have to be afraid. Maybe that's it. Jim never said, ever, this is how we get off the midline. But he was most concerned of everything I knew in terms of what they showed him on the Earth. He said, they said, you have to save the Amazon rainforest, because that really is the lungs of this planet. If you cut it all down, if it all goes to fire, then it may be the end of the entire Homo sapien experiment. So nothing is out of the woods, but out of all the turmoil as we're entering 2020, more and more people are saying to me, Linda, tell me, how can I help? What can we do? How do we move the needle in every direction toward helping the earth, helping the climate, helping children, helping animals, helping all of us? So maybe that's the signal. Maybe that's the signal that we've all got to listen to, because that may be the direction that we have to go to survive. And I do think, and Jim Sparks thought so too, that one of the things we have to do is to get humans off of the earth, learning how to survive on another planet like Mars or the moon or beyond. This feels like a critical year of all of those ingredients coming together, and maybe out of it by next New Year's. Oh, I swear, if we don't have that headline, we're not alone in the universe by then. So help me at Earthfiles. Tell everybody you know, subscribe, so our body politic of Earthfiles can get larger and larger, and that we can reach a night. And I've got champagne in the refrigerator. Brad, you know that's true, right? You know it is. And I'm waiting that we will open up a bottle of champagne together, and all of us. It's a celebration not of everything done or victory. It is a celebration that planet Earth, after thousands of years, Homo sapien sapien, is finally told a fundamental truth about where it came from. To me, that would be the paradigm shift that Jim Sparks hoped was going to go to light and survival in life. So some people think that's naive. I would rather concentrate on this is the image of where we're headed than worry about being naive. And I hope a whole bunch of you join me. And I am working on organizing your letters. Please, I know I say it, but it's a lot to go through. And one of these days, not only am I going to try to organize it into a book and get it published, but I'm going to try to make a segment. I think I may do it either next week or the week after, where I start, I've already got a file of some of the subjects, and they're all over, from you, in your words, and start sharing from you guys. Thank you for giving me the energy and the courage to come here on Wednesday nights. See you next week.